Good day. It is the 19th day of May already, 2021. Time is flying. It's beautiful outside. I'm going to do a run in a little while. Today's topic is going to be really a review of an entire agency. And that is an agency that you're all familiar with, probably have had contact with, TSA, which is the parent agency of the Federal Air Marshals and also of the screeners who work in the airport. So just to give a little bit of background, it's not a history class, but a little bit. I remember a time when a person could get on a flight without going through any security whatsoever, in the 1960s up to the early 70s. Now, what happened during that time was in the late 60s, early 70s, there was a rash of hijackings, mostly to Cuba. And why the hell they wanted to go there, I don't know. Mostly it was mentally deranged people, but they'd get on the flight, hijack the plane to Cuba. The Cubans would take them off. They'd stay overnight in a hotel. Castro would put them up, and they'd fly back to the United States. Fortunately, no one was hurt. What resulted from this is that President Nixon began to institute a program known as the Sky Marshals. And the Sky Marshals were armed federal law enforcement officers. So that was one leg of prevention. And the second leg of prevention was private security at the airport. And what happened when these two things happened is that the incidence of hijacking in the United States went down to about zero. Okay, you would go through a metal detector at the airport, and if presumably you're carrying a gun or a weapon or something, it's going to be detected. Now, there were problems with foreign airports. They said like the Athens airport, for instance, was wide open. But generally speaking, there was no hijackings at all. Now, again, I was hired in 1985 as a DEA agent, went through the FBI Academy. And it was odd because they issued us our weapons and they said, you're going to go to the counter, show your creds, and get on the plane. Now, what kind of training did we have with regards to flying armed? Because as a federal agent, DEA agent, you have to fly armed. Okay, it's a rule. And the policy was this, and I'm not giving up anything that's confidential because it's no longer the policy, but they said this: if a hijacking attempt occurs while you are on the plane, do nothing unless requested by the captain. Basically, in other words, the mentality was let the captain fly this nut wherever he or she wants to go, and we don't want shooting on the plane and so on and so forth. Every now and then you'd get trouble with captains coming on. We want to take your gun. I said, no, you can't take my gun. I'm a federal agent on duty. You don't want to be in trouble for obstructing a federal officer. They don't want that. I'd have stewardesses coming up. Is your special package, is it empty? I said, no, we don't carry empty guns. That doesn't make any sense. An empty gun is worse than no gun at all. Trust me, it's loaded. But, there were really no incidents. Now, fast forward to September 11th, 2001. And on that day, several groups of Arabs who had come to the United States, largely been recruited as Islamists, people who wanted to create an Islamic state. I think they had a number of complaints, one of which was the U.S. participation in the Gulf War. U.S. troops and women in arms in Saudi Arabia. They had a number of complaints. And their leaders is knucklehead Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan, and they've received a bit of flight training. And some of it I think they got on Microsoft Flight, to be honest with you, because they didn't practice flying jumbo jets. And the night before, they went to Walmart and bought box cutters, which I don't think were prohibited. I think you could have an X-Acto knife and get on a plane in 2001. I never tried it, never had to, but because I always had my weapon. But in any event, you know what happened. They got on the plane on September 11th, and the first two planes were flown into the World Trade Center. The pilot and crew were slaughtered. The third plane they took over, it was flown into the Pentagon. The fourth plane, by then, the learning curve had kicked in. And the passengers had cell phones. If you haven't seen the movie Flight 93, see it. It's a great movie. But they fought back. They took over the plane. It crashed in Shankville, Pennsylvania. And I drive by there on my way home to Illinois when I visit my mom. And it's a site of American heroism, in my opinion. What was the immediate response to September 11th? Well, this was it. They grounded the flights. There was all sorts of hysterical proposals. Have the Delta Force operators aboard the planes, which I think we have better use for Delta Force than putting them on a plane. Well, the upshot was they were going to hire air marshals, but they needed agents until that time. So every DEA office was tasked with providing agents to fly. And my group was tasked with providing agents to fly. I was a supervisor, and you picked the least productive agent. Now, that's just the way it is. They said, you're going flying. I don't want to go flying. You're going flying. And you should pay me for being on that detail because they think you're a hero. You just sit on a plane and you have to wait until they hire enough air marshals or whatever. The second thing they did very wisely, they hardened the cockpit. Okay, so you can't intrude into the cockpit with, kicking the door down or anything like that. And they began to hire air marshals, and the recruitment was mainly done from existing federal agencies. They promised them the sky, the moon, the stars, and a lot of them took the job and found that it was not at all what they wanted. And number two, a lot of what they had promised was not there. And number two, it was just work, 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 fly, 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 and you're exhausted. The third thing they did is they federalized the airport screeners, the famous TSA screeners. And so they certainly reacted to 9/11. Now, again, was this an appropriate reaction to 9/11? Was it overkill? In my opinion, it was. I think we've gone a little bit beyond what we needed to do as a result of 9/11. And, what has been the effectiveness of these screeners? And as recently as 2017, we don't have the exact numbers, but Homeland Security did effectiveness checks on the TSA screeners and found that in 70% of the time they were able to get knives, guns, and facsimile explosives on a plane, which means that their screening was not nearly as good as it should be. Well, what was the agency's response to this? Well, it was to crack down even more and make the lines even longer. Now, again, prior to 2001 or prior to hiring all these people, there was screening in the airport. If you were carrying a gun, they're probably going to find it, okay? When they go over your thing and they x-ray your bag, it wasn't that difficult. And the men who took the flights on September 11th weren't armed with firearms. They had X-Acto knives. Okay, and the pilots did what they were trained to do, hand over the plane, basically, or open up the cockpit door. They didn't anticipate that these people were going to be on a suicide mission. But again, as a result of this, there's been what I would call an overreaction, hiring of thousands of men and women as air marshals, hiring of tens of thousands of people as airport screeners, coming up with a new program called the Real ID, which is, I suppose if you don't have a real ID, you have a fake ID. You have to get a special ID from the Driver's License Bureau in order to fly, or the DMV. But to vote, you don't need any ID. We get into this safetyism again, where we're hyper safe. And realistically, the plan that the terrorists had put in place on the 11th, it was over by 1 o'clock that day. Their MO was over. The American people had figured it out. The people on the plane had figured it out. It wasn't going to happen anymore. They took the plane back. So what we've got now is a $7 billion agency. And what that $7 billion agency does is it has agents flying from point A to point B, but they're not on every flight. They can't be on every flight. The agents are bored out of their skulls. There are severe morale problems in the agency, and we'll watch that right now.
The director of the Federal Air Marshal Service is responding to a scathing New York Times report that claims the organization has issues with alcohol abuse, harassment, and low morale in its ranks. The service was created in 1961 and expanded after the September 11th attacks. It has about 3,000 officers and an annual budget of $800 million. Critics say it needs to be reformed or possibly shut down. Chris Van Cleve was given special access to the Air Marshal Training Center outside Atlantic City, New Jersey. He's at the service's field office in Chantilly, Virginia. Chris, good morning.
Good morning. Air marshals use mock cabins like this one to train for worst-case scenarios. Their mission is to keep an airliner from being used as a weapon, and that requires some pretty specialized training. But the agency has been faulted for not being able to effectively show how good of a deterrent it is to terrorism. And this latest controversy has some lawmakers asking if it's a layer of security worth paying for.
Last year, an Inspector General report found limitations with contributions to aviation security and recommended shutting down some operations to better use resources.
It's just money going down a rat hole and doing no good whatsoever.
Congressman John Duncan, a Tennessee Republican, wants to end the program.
If it was up to me, we wouldn't still have it, because I think it's the most needless, useless, wasteful organization in the entire federal government, and that's saying a lot.
What is not in question is the agency's focus on training.
Okay, so they have difficulty recruiting. They have difficulty retaining agents or air marshals. It's just, I don't see the need for several thousand armed officers to fly them. We only have like 4,500 DEA special agents, and you have all these federal agents flying around. Again, I don't think the effectiveness of the screeners has gone up since 9/11. I think what has gone up is just the length of lines in the airport and the frustration of people. And I would submit to you that if you look at the TSA's website or the usajobs.gov, there are pages and pages of vacancies. So these agencies cannot hire. The pay is abysmally bad, and the people don't like it. This is the agency report for the best places to work in the federal government. Again, it comes from the Employee Viewpoint Survey. It's what the employees have to say, and they don't rate it very high at all. It's 398 out of 420, about as low as you can get. And the engagement score, again, that's what this is it's 44.6. It's comprised of several things, and that is, do they recommend it as a good place to work? Are they satisfied with their jobs? Those are the key questions. And as you can see from 2005, which is about when they were founded, it really has not been good. It's been bad all this time. And this is largely comprised, again, of the screeners and the federal air marshals. I wish it separated the two, but it does not. When we look at the category, by category, training is the only thing that they really have rated a little bit higher. With regards to performance-based rewards and advancements, it's really about as low as you can get. It's 409 out of 413. You can't get almost any worse than this. It's terrible. Okay, with regards to effective leadership, 382 out of 413. Senior leadership, I mean, there's just very little confidence in this agency, and people who work there don't have a lot of good things to say about it. And if you look at the usajobs.gov, you will find that there are pages and pages of vacancies. And here you have it, 392 jobs open right now. They pay by the hour, and some have better pay than others. King Salmon, Alaska, kind of goes from little places to big places, but you kind of get the picture. It's a very wide open job. So what do I propose? What do I propose with all my experience? And again, these are just my impressions, my opinions. You can take them, you can leave it. What I would do with regards, I would let the current air marshals stay on and let them retire out with their 20 years. And to replace them, I would just say federal agents can fly for free. If you're a DEA, FBI, Secret Service, Marshal, Border Patrol, the federal government will just pay for your ticket. You carry your weapon. You'll go through a little bit of training on how to deal with a person on board the plane. You've already gone through a ton of firearms training in your academy. And if you wanted to make that even more detailed, you could say any law enforcement officer who's LEOSA qualified. What is LEOSA? It's the Law Enforcement Officer Safety Act, which allows a state officer or federal officer to carry a concealed weapon in interstate commerce. With regards to the screeners, privatization of the screeners again. And that way you would have efficiency, safety, and just I don't think that the efficiency or the safety, any of that would be harmed. I think it would be better. I don't think it can get any worse. So hopefully it's been informative. You got a little bit of my opinion with it. Tomorrow I'm going to talk about federal unions and what I think of them, and not much, but and then we'll continue with agency reviews as we did today. So thank you for watching. Please try to remember to hit the subscribe button and the like if you like it. If you don't like it, put down you don't like it. You think I'm a knucklehead or whatever, I'll respond. I respond in charity to everybody. Have a wonderful day.